Because there's so little appreciation in Japan. Even if they wait, probably inflation would have grown faster than the appreciation of the house, and the
What
house would be worth less
appreciation.
by the time.
Hi there, folks, and welcome back to Nippon Trading International's Japan Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Ziv Nakajima again, and this podcast is brought to you, among others, by Emil Gorgis of realestate.jp. He's a Tokyo real estate agent who specializes in serving international or mixed nationality families who are looking for the perfect family home. So Emil's an Australian. He's been living here in Japan for over 2 decades now, and for about half of that time he's been buying, selling, and managing real estate properties in Tokyo on behalf of his own family and a great many happy clients. And he also acts as a mortgage broker on behalf of his clients. So he's got dedicated loan officers in many of the Japanese mega banks. And if you're a regular listener of the podcast, you probably already know him from our JREP, the Japan Real Estate Experts Panel sessions, which means that you're already aware of the fact that the man is an absolute fountain of wisdom on all things related to real estate in Japan, and in particular to family homes, the greater Tokyo metropolitan area, and mortgages. And most importantly, he's incredibly generous with his time and advice, which he's more than happy to provide at no cost or commitment to anyone asking. So if you've been thinking about buying your home in Tokyo, but you've been sitting on the fence for a while, or you just want to have a chat in English with a real expert, drop him a line on sales@realestate.jp. Hit him up today and start exploring your options. All right, so welcome back to the Japan Real Estate Podcast. And today's episode is a good one. 2 back-to-back conversations there for you. The first is a chat that I've had recently with Nick from Japan Remotely, which, in case you're not familiar with the company, is a consultancy service specifically designed for anyone interested in relocating to Japan. And they help with anything from immigration advice to housing, finding work, or starting a business in the country, advice for singles, couples, families, you name it. I've spoken with Nick last year on another podcast, which we'll link to in this episode's show notes, about his own personal journey and connection to Japan, as well as on the topic of the digital nomad visa, which was announced then. And this time around, we're talking about buying a family home as part of your move to the country. When exactly is the right time to pull the trigger on your home purchase? Before, during, or after your visa application? Before, during, or after the move itself? Should you visit first? Should you buy on arrival? Should you buy in advance? What are the timelines and the processes involved in a purchase, and how do those coincide with your visa application? What's involved in ongoing maintenance of these homes, and how practical is it to manage them remotely before you've moved here full time? The intricacies of registering your various addresses upon arrival, how to budget correctly for the big move, how long does it take to move in, how does having a home here affect your visa approval chances, and also why it might be a good idea to get official representation even if you're here in person. How do sellers and realtors' mentality differ in Japan compared to other countries? We also talk about what are Akia banks, how do they work, so a whole lot of coverage on a whole bunch of topics, all related to the grand topic of purchasing a family home in the land of the rising sun for those who are living here or planning to live here. So enjoy the conversation, and I'll see you again on the other side of this one to tell you a bit about the next one coming up. Okay, so back again, yet again, with Nick from Japan Remotely. And we wanted to talk about real estate, I guess, today, right? Or specifically purchases of residential homes.
Yeah. I'm really interested in purchasing a home in Japan. It's just amazing to me what good deals they are. I mean, for under $100,000, there's fantastic opportunities out there. Not only in rural Japan, but in outskirts of cities. So I've been looking into it, and I've been thinking about when is the best, how does it work, and when is the best timing to buy one of these houses, especially if you're considering relocating to Japan. I can think to myself, on the one hand, if you're going to relocate to Japan, getting there first and working with somebody like Nippon Tradings to go together and visit these properties is one way to do it. And once you have your house and you have enough time to look at it, going ahead and moving in. But on the other hand, um, it could be better to have the house in place before you get there. It could be easier. So, could you tell me a little bit about the timeline and the basics of buying a property in Japan? How long should someone take from start to finish to buy a house in Japan?
Well, the short answer is obviously it depends, right? We have
Yeah.
clients of different profiles, and the two paths that you've described suit specific people at specific points in their lives. The prime criteria I'd say would be what are your living arrangements while you're in Japan and still don't have a house? Are you okay? Do you have the budget? Do you have the capacity? Do you have the connections to stay somewhere cheaply, or at least in a way that's not going to be devastating to your budget? Because if you're going to be in a hotel room for 3 months, that's obviously going to cost, right? Even
Yeah.
an Airbnb, it's depending on the size of the size of the group you're in. And I mean, I'd say if it's a single or a couple, it may be a bit more feasible. But if you're a family with kids, keeping 5 or 6 people somewhere for 3 months while you're looking for a house can be a bit of a nightmare, both financially and logistically. So that's one aspect of it. Remote viewings are obviously not 100% substitute for in-person viewings,
Hmm.
but I'd say the vast majority of our clients would prefer us to do remote viewings on their behalf,
Hmm.
especially if it's holiday homes or homes that they're going to be using for, let's say, up to 6 months a year, and it's
Hmm.
not their primary residence. The more it becomes your primary residence, the more I'd say it would be beneficial for you to come and view in person before pulling a trigger on a deal. Unless it's a brand new built home, but then we're not talking about the 100,000 and below anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a more substantial investment for sure.
The process takes, let's assume that you're not extremely picky and
Hmm.
you're not that constrained on budget. So rather than say 100,000 or under, I would maybe be more comfortable saying 100 to 150,
Okay.
because that would
That would be move-in ready.
yes, in most cases they'll be move-in ready, unless you're right in the center of Tokyo or Osaka, obviously
Yeah.
a bit more challenging. But in other places, yes, that would be move-in ready, even if not brand new. And
Hmm.
then that would take less time to source, unless you're again very picky, because some people are very laser focused on traditional aspects of Japanese architecture, or certain size of garden or backyard, or certain distance from particular facilities that just maybe not that common, right? In a particular budget, at least. So assuming you're not too picky and the budget is not too constrained, it would normally take a month or two to source your final shortlist, potentially less
Hmm.
than that, but let's call it up to a month or two. And then a month or two from when an offer is accepted, depending on whether you need to or don't need a structural inspection, which we would advise for properties that are 30 years and older. So
Hmm.
without the structural inspection and waiting for that report, I'd say a month to signing the contract. With the inspection, maybe up to 2 months to signing the contract, and then another month for documentation and settlement. So you'd need to execute a couple of documents overseas, get the hard copies couriered back here to Japan, at which point the settlement can take place. So worst case scenario, from the moment an offer is accepted, I'd say about 3 months.
Okay. That's interesting because that's similar to the amount of time that processing a long-term visa takes. Um,
Good point.
it it might be beneficial for people to think of it as one process. They've decided to move to Japan. They've decided to buy a house. And it's a lot of work, but maybe they should do those activities in parallel. Get with their immigration lawyer uh, and their real estate facilitator at the same time and kicking off those processes because it does take the better part of 3 months to do it. Um,
Well, I mean,
I
that's
so
assuming that you have a a fair likelihood of the visa being approved. Otherwise, you're going to end up
Yeah.
with maybe a holiday home instead of a residential home, and then would you have paid that much?
Yeah, that's true. Um, there's some risk involved with that strategy.
Mm.
Um, so in that case, if you're risk averse, it might be better to wait for your visa to go through and be 100%, uh, and then look for the house once you're in Japan. I guess it depends on your risk profile and what it
Unless
is
you're
you're trying
sure
to
that you're
do.
definitely, unless you're sure that you're
Yeah.
definitely be going to be coming here for at least a month or two a year, and
Yeah.
will have some use of the property
hmm
regardless, right?
Yeah, if you're in that position, you have assets or remote work, um, and you can commit to doing that as a holiday home, then that's different. It, like you said about being picky, um, it also for people thinking about having a longer presence in Japan, being flexible about what that means, whether it's part-time or full-time, and they have to kind of, I guess, think about uh, what their priorities are and
Yeah, and
what is going to be a deal
expenses, right?
breaker.
Budget and expenses, because when you're living in a house, a lot of the things you can take care of yourselves, or at least you can be in attendance when somebody comes to take care of them.
Yeah,
If this is a holiday home and you're using it for 1 or 2 or 3 months a year, somebody needs to take care of it in your absence. Japan, for example, just as
yeah,
one example, Japan is very humid country. Mold is a big issue, and it builds up on interiors very fast here. If
yeah.
you don't have somebody airing the property out at least every couple of months and doing some light vacuuming, and definitely once a month during the wetter months, then your interior will deteriorate very rapidly. If you've got a garden or a backyard, especially if you've got one with trees or bushes overhanging public roads or neighboring property boundaries, you're obliged by law to take care of that. All of that can be quite expensive if you're not there doing it yourself, right?
Yeah, I never even thought about that. That's, yeah, that could be a potential money pit. Um,
Especially depending on the size of the. I mean, a lot of our customers are in love with Japanese, again, traditional architecture,
mhm,
which also comes with Japanese gardens.
mhm.
Japanese gardens take a lot of maintenance. And again, the more trees and bushes are near the boundaries of the properties, this can come up to thousands and thousands of dollars a year in maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, to me, if you're going to buy a house in Japan, the best way to make the most of your investment is to live in it. Um, but yeah, there's some risk in the timing that if your visa doesn't come through, um, that it would end up being a holiday home and being more of an investment for that purpose than you wanted to.
Well, I mean,
Um,
to be fair, your clientele are obviously people who are relocating to Japan, or at least, going to be living here a fair amount of the time every year. Our clientele, to date, about half of them are remote type investors. They're just
mhm,
owning properties that they rent out and make money off them, in
I
which
see.
case it's a profitable endeavor in any case. And the
hmm
other half are definitely holiday home buyers. So those are people
Okay.
who have the budget, have the capacity, and have the interest because they do know that they will be visiting here at least 1 or 2, 3 months a year.
hmm
And to them, we just advise them along the way to make sure that they're aware of what it's going to cost, not just to buy, but to maintain the property. So if they can live without the garden or the backyard, we would advise to maybe consider a condo unit or a house with a smaller footprint. Um, they need to also be aware again that properties over 30 or 40 years of age, even without a garden or backyard, come with an average of a few $1,000s a year and just annual maintenance and repairs. They're not really built to last in Japan. It's very non-durable wood slash plaster type materials that do require regular repairs and maintenance and so forth. So it's very doable. A lot of people are doing it. Again, half of our customers are doing it, but they do need to be aware and budget for it accordingly. So if it ends up costing you more than it would cost you to come here and stay at an Airbnb, there's not much of a point, right?
Yeah, that's true. Another benefit of, I guess, for having a house when you arrive, if you're thinking about whether to buy it before you get to Japan or after. Um, I know that the process for registering with the local ward, um, you're going to have to do it again if you move to Japan and you don't have your house yet. You have to have a certain type of address in order to register with whatever city you're in. You can't do it from an Airbnb.
No, no,
Somehow.
you can.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
not
I heard.
hotels, but guest houses and Airbnb you can definitely register as addresses.
Okay.
Because I mean,
Oh, that's good to know.
some people live in a guest house for a year or two, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So they
definitely
can.
doable. But I mean, there is the hassle of having to go there and change your
Mhm.
address registration once you do get the new address, right?
That's good to know. I always thought that pretty much the only option, uh, if you were first arriving in Japan, where it was something like a Sakura House or Leo Palace.
Which is a guest house.
Um,
That's what I'm. Oh, Sakura House is a guest house. Leo Palace is a monthly rental.
yeah.
But Sakura House and Airbnb are identical. So
Okay.
as long as you have an address where you can receive post to, as opposed to a hotel again,
Hmm.
then that's a registerable address.
Okay. So then the only slight pain is to have to change your registration after you purchase the house.
Yeah, a couple of
Um,
hours at the legal affairs bureau or what.
Yeah, so one option would be to research in advance the temporary housing that you want, whether it's a long-term Airbnb or a guest house or a small apartment and like a Leo Palace, and you're willing to do that for potentially 3, 4 months while you're searching for your house, and then change everything and move over to your place, and then maybe at that point in time start to ship your stuff over and uh and do the full move in.
Yes, if you can afford it and you can plan for it in advance and you do want to view the properties yourselves, then that would be the preferable way to do it. Yes, but then we would have to advise people, and again, this is maybe more geared towards the people who are shopping at the cheaper end of the market, is
Hmm.
that a lot of these properties that are under 100,000 would require some renovations and repairs before they'll be move-in ready, even if it's
Hmm.
not something major and structural. It could be just the
Yeah.
interior, it could be just to replace a hot water boiler system, stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, that takes time. So
Yeah.
arriving here with a strict end of budget deadline saying, oh,
Oh yeah.
we got to move out of this Airbnb in 3 months, otherwise we can't afford anything anymore. That's just going to put you in a very stressful situation, which will end up just getting you not the best job done and not the best house to move into.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess with anything, if your budget is lower, then your flexibility on time should be higher.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very good way to put it, actually.
Yeah.
But we often find that it's exactly the other way around. I mean,
Well,
people who do have the financial capability are better at being patient.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it would be stressful to have a resource constraint and then have something take longer than you expect it to, for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
it's similar in a way to investors. We often get approached by people, who dream of having their first investment, whether it's in Japan or just any profitable country, and their entire life savings is 30, $40,000. And then we have to explain to them that yes, it's investable, but it's a low grade investment, and low grade investments by nature tend to fluctuate a lot more. And
mhm,
we don't want to be in a position where you are constantly concerned about losing your entire nest egg on a
mhm.
bad investment, right? It's not necessarily going to be bad, but it could take 6 months, 12 months. You could need to pour a little bit more money into it to get
Yeah,
stuff working. And we
it's not
really
a
need to
mutual
be,
fund.
no, it's not. We don't like being in that situation because, I mean, number one, we can't provide the best service for your money if your budget is that limited. And number two is we are going to be feeling your pain and stressing out along with you, but there's not going to be much else that we'll be able to do except tell you that, this has to be fixed. And if you can't afford it, then you're not going to get a tenant, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you've attended any of our recent JREP Summit events in Tokyo, you've probably heard our sponsor, Robert Miller from Innovatious.com. He's been in web solutions here in Japan for the past 25 years, and he's also an active investor in Japanese real estate property, as well as global online property, which is his specialty and what his company Innovatious is all about. They offer a full suite of website services for entrepreneurs and small business owners, including all aspects of web design and management, backup and updates, content formatting and editing, proactive maintenance and error fixing, you name it, with a strong focus on SEO excellence, which is what gets you those hardcore, top of the list search engine rankings. But there is a difference. Innovatious works off a simple, all-inclusive monthly subscription model, as opposed to the typical outdated and confusing per project model. So you never have to wonder how much any request for any work to be done on your website might cost. It's always $297 per month. Period. And if that's not enough, if you mention that you've heard of their services on the Japan Real Estate Podcast, you'll also get 10% off this monthly price for life. Also, and equally important, if not more, you can try out Innovatious for just 1 month, then switch them off, on again later if you wish, and so forth. There are no minimum subscription terms. Now, if you're a small business owner, managing and growing a website is super distracting and time consuming, right? That's exactly where Innovatious comes in. Robert's team takes care of all of that for you so that you can focus on what you do best. So feel free to email Rob at robert@innovatious.com. That's INNOVACIOUS.com. And his team will conduct a full SEO and website audit on your site, reveal anything that you should address to lift your website's appeal and visitor numbers, and provide you with an easy-to-read, detailed report with your own branding so that you can make some informed decisions on your online strategy and watch your business grow as you implement it. So once more, robert@innovatious.com. Drop him a line and get your website reviewed today.
Other benefits of having a house that I've been wondering about, and I wonder if you've experienced, is that after you're in Japan, let's say you've moved and you have an investor visa or some kind of work visa, and you have the house. Especially for the investor management visa, we've talked before about the challenge of renewal. Do you have a sense from your clients that have gone through this process? Does having property in Japan positively influence your chances of having your visa renewed? Do you have a feel for that, or?
It's not so much having a property in Japan as much as having been in the country for a longer period of time. So if you're
Okay.
here and living in Japan, whether it's a rental or a property that you own or even a guest house, but the immigration department sees that you have not left the country in the last at least 6 months, hopefully closer to 12 months, it does make it easier to renew the visa. They see that you're seriously and stably staying here. The house might help a little bit if it's under your ownership, but not that much. I mean, property ownership is freehold and open to anyone regardless of their visa status, so that in itself doesn't make much of a difference.
Okay, that makes sense. I was wondering, especially for those that are considering like a fast track to permanent residency, if whether or not having financial ties to Japan in the form of property or bank accounts, if that plays into at all consideration of immigration when they're looking at those type of applications.
I'm assuming you're referring to the renewal, right? Because when you apply for the investor management, for the business management visa, you're not going to have a bank account, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So for renewal, to be perfectly honest, what they're most concerned about is that you're making enough taxable income, right?
Yeah.
The infrastructures and exactly how you set it up is far less of a concern to them. They want to see that it helps, again, if you're in the country for longer periods of time, but beyond that, it's just a matter of, have you met their unofficial criteria of about 3.5 million yen in taxable per year?
I see.
Plus that same amount again per dependent. Yeah, that's important for people to recognize.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you're here as on a business management visa and you've got a spouse, that becomes 7 million yen. If you got a kid, that becomes 10.5 million yen, and so forth.
Oh wow. That's quite the change. Maybe
Mm.
leave wife and junior at home while you start up the business.
That's what a lot of people do that. Yeah, if they can live with, just periodical visits rather than staying together for the first year or two, then yes, a lot of people do that. Asians are particularly adept at doing that. Westerners, not as much. But
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of the Philippines, Vietnamese, Malaysian people that you see living and working in Japan, Nepalese, are definitely doing that. And sometimes it's just forever a case of them sending money back home because they just can't afford, they're not making enough to bring the family over.
Yeah, that's real talk right there.
Mm.
Well, cool. I get the sense that for people interested in buying a house in Japan, both those paths are optional and viable. You could first make sure that you get your visa in hand and then have a plan to uh, have temporary housing in Japan and then uh, make sure you have enough budget to have your uh, to sustain that temporary housing while you're working on your, I guess, Japan Forever home. And then the other path is also fine, where you work with somebody like Nippon Tradings and buy it remotely, potentially in conjunction with your visa application, so that when you get there, you just live right in your home. But in that situation, there could be the risk that if your visa doesn't go through, uh, that it's either becomes a holiday home for you or it just has to wait until you apply again and maybe fix up your application and
That's right.
uh
And I think it's also important for people to recognize that even if you are here and do have a visa, still outside of Tokyo and a handful of other more foreigner-friendly areas, you will probably need some sort of intermediary with you, even if you're physically here, because of the language and culture barriers and the way that, unfortunately, Japanese professionals, especially the more rural you get, are more panicky about dealing with foreigners, whether
yeah.
they're residents or not. So it's a
I
good
mean,
idea to plan ahead for exactly how you're going to be viewing and buying a property, even if you are going to be here physically.
Ziv, I lived in Inaka for 2 years and I've passed my JLPT N1 and I do not want to deal with that. I want to hire you
Yeah.
guys to do it.
Vast majority of our customers, yes. And
Yeah.
a lot of them actually try it out on their own and then come to us when they realize what you've just
Yeah.
said.
Oh no.
I've tried, they're ghosting me, they're saying I can't buy because I don't have a hanko yet, and ridiculous
Oh
stuff.
my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ridiculous stuff. I mean, people just don't understand the mentality. In my first job in Japan when I was working as an English teacher, I asked the Board of Education if I could use the softball field to play frisbee with the kids. And they told me, "Oh, and then this is the middle of nowhere, by example. Nobody's using the field." They said, "Oh, well, you have to fill out this paperwork and you can use it in 6 months." So I've been there. I know what it's like to deal with the public officials and being an Inaka. And no, sir, I don't want to have to deal with that myself.
It's not even just public officialdom. It's you know how the assumption is in most Western countries and a lot of Asian countries too. The assumption is that if you come in with cash and you want to buy something, then we will take your money, right?
Oh
This
yeah,
is
take the money and give it
not
to
the
me.
case here. Simply not. They don't want your money. They want the smoothest, less hassle some way, even if it means waiting another 3 years to sell the property to somebody else.
Yeah, it's weird that there's such a glut of properties and so little hustle to sell them. Uh, from from a business perspective, if you've got a lot of supply, you want to move that supply, but for some reason in Japan they're still content with just waiting years or forever for that to happen.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the sellers themselves, but the agents
Hmm.
as well. Yes, they're still under the assumption it is changing over time as they realize that their local market is shrinking more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
But the general assumption is that if we wait a little bit longer, then a Japanese buyer will show up.
Yeah. It's even funny too because there's so little appreciation in Japan. Even if they wait, probably inflation would have grown faster than the appreciation of the house, and the
What
house would be worth less
appreciation.
by the time. Yeah.
Yeah. It's again, it's changing, but very slowly. You see it with the Akia banks too, the local
Hmm.
municipalities that have been tasked by the national government to
Hmm.
deal with the problem of these abandoned homes, right?
Hmm.
Some of them, and it's really a lottery kind of matter if you have somebody who's a bit more savvy or a bit more motivated in the
Hmm.
local municipality, but some of them, I'd say at least half of them, it's just a case of, government said we have to. So Watanabe-san, you're in charge of abandoned homes. Here's the list. Yeah.
Yeah, and then in 2 years, Watanabe-san changes to Sato-san,
Yeah.
and Sato-san doesn't know anything about the Akia Bank
Yeah.
program, and has to onboard from square one.
There's no onboarding even. I mean, it's that
Yeah.
they're just not, they have zero interest. I mean, the way it works is the local municipality appoints usually a person who then becomes the Akia department.
Hmm.
That person then looks around for some local realtor who seems to be slightly responsive, and then that's the realtor that they work with. And any inquiries just are handed off to that realtor. So it's not really, I mean, obviously there are a few more extra hoops to jump through in terms of
Hmm.
applications. You have to become an Akia Bank member to even be put in touch with that realtor. And then you run into the same hurdles you'd run to with any rural realtor is like, oh, gaijin chotomate. So, I mean, it's just the way. I hope it's changing. It's changing very slowly in some particular places, but like all things Japan, it'll take a while.
Yeah. I know we're running short on time, but I had another question that just popped into my head about we talked about risk aversion and when to buy a house versus when you're moving. In the situation, let's say hypothetically that you decided to buy the house in advance and your visa falls through and you can't go to Japan and you're not gonna your situation won't allow you to use it for a holiday home. The process for selling it again, is it as difficult as it was for buying it? What do you think about that?
The sale is a lot easier on the logistical legal side of things because the gaijin is
Hmm.
already the owner. So there's no convincing
Yeah.
anyone to allow you to sell the property like there is with convincing you to buy.
Hmm.
But the then challenge then becomes if it's a rural property, then who's going to buy it and at what price, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
finding the buyer will be difficult. So
Yeah,
in that sense, if you're going to be a little bit risky and buy the house before your visa comes through, you might prioritize locations with a bit more property movement, like
100%.
closer to
Yeah.
cities such as, yeah.
Yes, I would
Okay,
stick
that's
to
that's
about an hour, 45 minutes if you can from a major city in that case.
okay. Yeah, that's good advice for people thinking about going that path. Because it would be wonderful, like myself, I would really like to have the house ready to go when I get there. And just show up and get the keys, open the door, and away you go. Um, but it's in that case, it makes sense to not get something in the middle of Fukui Prefecture and get something an hour outside of a
Well, I
major
mean,
city so you could
if you want to
settle again.
avoid the risk factor, get your visa approved, but then take the time to remotely purchase the property or come here and
Yeah,
visit if you want to do
I see.
viewings. It's not like you have to enter the country within 2 days from visa approval, right?
That's true.
Mm.
That's true. You could stagger it that way. That's a third path
Yeah,
is um is is staggering your entry and uh maybe getting the search started at the same time and then waiting to execute on a certain house until you get that visa approval.
if it's indeed 3 months, if it's longer than that, then a lot of the properties will already gone, unless they're again very rural and very,
Yeah.
very boro, very, very dilapidated. But
Hmm.
otherwise, a lot of them, like the good quality properties, will probably be gone within a 3 month period. So
Yeah.
maybe as you're getting closer to the visa, let's say a month before you think it might be
Hmm.
approved, that would be a good time to start searching.
That's a good timeline to know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, those are my questions, Ziv. I think I have a lot better understanding for what we're gonna do when we go forward and buy a house. Uh, I think it makes a lot of sense uh, to get started with the concept of searching, but perhaps waiting to press that execution until that visa approval comes through. I I've never been a homeowner in Japan before, and so I look forward to the day when I get those keys.
We're looking forward to serve you. But until then, please, anyone who's listening among your customers, we are here and happy to assist. At the moment, I've been instructed not to take on any new customers for a few months because we're getting a few too many of them. But we can
It's a
still
good
provide
problem to
you.
have.
Yeah, depends on who you ask. My partner is just about to sling me out the window, but it's we're still very much happy to consult. So we would put you in touch with a
Hmm.
foreigner-friendly realtor. They're still realtors.
Hmm.
They're going to be
Hmm.
transaction-oriented generally, or they're not going to tell you what questions to ask or which property might be better for your
Hmm.
specific needs and risk
Hmm.
factors. But
Hmm.
then we can come on as consultants, which is a lot cheaper than having us do everything on your behalf and just
Yeah.
hold your hand along the way, review documents, that sort of thing. So that we're still happy to do, even while we're not taking on full board customers yet.
Well, that's great. It's as I get these customers onboarded, I'll let them know that that type of service exists and they should use it.
Happy to. Well, great talking to you again. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ziv.
Talk to you soon.
We interrupt this broadcast to tell you about Tokyo Family Stays. They're a short-term rentals company in Tokyo, and they offer a home away from home experience, which is just perfect for remote working, quarantining, if that's still a thing, or if you just need somewhere quiet to get away from the world. They offer a variety of options for families, corporate relocations, or even if you're simply transitioning between homes in Tokyo. The properties are super comfortable, tastefully furnished, fully equipped with all amenities, and they accommodate up to 10 people. So really the only thing you'll need to bring with you is your toothbrush and maybe a change of clothes. They come with fast unlimited wireless internet, dedicated workspaces, and fully equipped kitchens, and they're just a delight to stay in. Fantastic alternative to Japanese business hotels, which if you've ever stayed in one, you probably know they're tiny, they're noisy, fine for a night or two if you're on your own, but longer term or with a family, you'll probably feel you're in a jail cell very quickly in a Japanese business hotel. So if you want to give yourself a sense of space and freedom by renting a real home with comfortable Western beds, including all the necessities like baby bedding, children's toys, high chairs, etc., you definitely want to reach out to Tokyo Family Stays. They've been at it for over a decade. They're a fully licensed minpaku or short-term stay operator. And as a special bonus for our viewers and listeners, they're also throwing in a breakfast basket upon arrival for anyone who books and mentions the Japan Real Estate Podcast or NTI. And not only for guests, if you're a property owner, you've got an investment property that you want to tweak for higher profit, or a holiday home that you want to rent out when you're not using it via short-term stays, drop them a line today, see how they can help you maximize your property's income. And again, as a special bonus to our viewers and listeners, they're also offering a free audit of your existing short-term stay listings without any obligation whatsoever. So feel free to reach out to them at tokyofamilystays.com. Well worth a visit. And again, if you're in the market for a family home in or around the Tokyo metropolitan area, Emil's your man. Don't be shy to reach out to him as well at sales@realestate.jp. And now, back to the podcast. Right, so some interesting strategies there for anyone in the process of relocating to Japan and buying a family home here. And again, it's important to note that all of these approaches work. It's really a matter of pinpointing the most appropriate one for your specific circumstances, budget, timelines, etc. And if you're not sure, feel free to contact Japan remotely. We'll link to the website in this episode's show notes, of course. Hit Nick up and he'll provide you with some advice, recommendations, all the way up to a complete relocation plan, custom made for your needs and ready to execute. All right, so on to our second call. This one's with a group of friends who are just about to kick off their investment portfolio here in Japan. Now, they've got some DIY and building/renovation skills among them that they would like to utilize, and they're hoping that they could be profitable in that regard. So we talk houses versus condos, DIY renovations, Mainly, is it worth buying old houses and renovating them on your own from an investment perspective, which is quite different to a holiday home situation, of course? How does appreciation and capital growth, or at least capital retainment, work for condos and houses? And then we get into their personal budget. We discuss what 100 or 120,000 US dollars lets one purchase in Japan. And then we also look at a higher budget, say 500 to 600,000. So for this purpose, we do a bit of hands-on investment property deal analysis. So be sure to tune in via YouTube if you'd like to look at these Excel sheets together with us. And then finally, we talk a bit about which locations are best to focus on. So looking at population trends in various cities, prefectures, what are the things that we look at when we decide where to invest? And finally, what's the best way to send funds to and from Japan, as well as a bit about our services. How do they work? What do they cost? What people can expect from the process of working with us. Enjoy the conversation again, and I'll see you one last time on the other side.
Okay, so I've briefly reviewed your email, but do you want to run me through the background maybe verbally?
Sure. The brief synopsis is that we are looking at having 4 of us as partners with a starting budget of about $100,000 to $120,000, with a plan to buy 2, 3, 4 LDK single family homes in the 20 to 25-year-old range. We are very open to that list of locations I sent you in the email.
Yep.
Kind of looking towards some guidance from you there, because we're open to some thoughts there. Let's see. And then we're looking at getting some ideas from you. It looks like you're pretty much our one-stop shop, and then you vet the real estate agent, the scrivener, do all that, and
Yes.
kind of with us.
Yes, so that's essentially correct. But before we dig into that any further, you're mentioning 100 and 120K for multiple homes that are 20 or 25 years old?
No, so our plan is to start with 1 to 2, with either 1 in the 100K range or 2 in somewhere like Sapporo, where the prices are maybe a bit lower, and shooting for about 75K for the first and 30K for the second, with the first getting us going and starting to generate revenue while we kind of personally renovate the second and take that upon ourselves.
And when you say revenue, what sort of rentals are we talking about? Are you talking about short-term rentals?
Long-term is the goal.
Okay, in that case, why single-family homes? They're not exactly the asset class of choice. They're not really built to last in Japan. So 20, 25 years is when the maintenance expenses will start going up a bit more rapidly. I mean, from a tax depreciation perspective, their lifespan is 23 years. That's not to say that you demolish them or that they're not functional after that, but it's definitely when you'll start putting up $2,000-3,000 a year in average maintenance and repairs. For our customers who are looking for long-term leases, we normally recommend condo units rather than houses. So I'm just wondering why you were going towards that direction.
I think the goal there is Cole and Logan are contractors themselves, and we're thinking of doing a lot of the work on their own, which is why we're hoping maybe one of them is newer and maybe generates income immediately, kind of like you're talking about, which a condo would be fine for the first purchase. And then the second one maybe requiring a lot more renovation that Cole and Logan are able to do on their own once, we get the purchase made. So we could focus on just that first purchase now, if that's what you recommend. But at some point in the near future, we'd be looking at a second one shortly to follow.
Well, I understand the wish to leverage Cole's and Logan's expertise in renovating and maintaining a house, but they are, so firstly, if it's a house, you're looking for a family-sized tenant, right? Which Japan's population trends being what they are, those take longer to source. It's much easier to place a single or a couple into a property than a family because there's not that many families with multiple children and whatnot in Japan. They do tend to stay in place longer, but then when they do move out, you've got, number one, a longer vacancy, because again, it would take time to source another family as opposed to singles or couples. And secondly, you'll have a larger, just by nature of the property, you'll have a larger floor space and more items to renovate, which also means more expenses. Whereas if you're going for a 1-2 bedroom single / couple sized unit, and there's not going to be many of those in the houses sector, but definitely a lot of condos like that, then your expenses are a lot more limited just by nature of the smaller layout. So we don't, just to give you a rough idea, numbers wise, out of about, I think 350 properties that we have under management at the moment, we only have one single person who actually owns a family home with a long-term tenant in it. Everybody else has gone either for condos, or if it is a house, they're exploring short-term stay options, but that's a lot more hands-on, requires more mental bandwidth, check-ins and check-outs and constant cleaning and monitoring market rates for nightly price and so forth. So that's a whole different ball game.
So if we don't really have the bandwidth for short-term stays, but we do have some bandwidth, like I said, I mean, are we not going to save a significant amount of money by doing renovations on our own in Japan? Is the cost of labor low enough that it's not even worth entertaining that idea?
It is, if that is the space you're going to be active in. Again, if you're going to be active in the family home space, then yes, it obviously is going to save you money if you're doing the work yourself. The question is just, do you really want to be active in that space? Because it's not really the investment asset class of choice for most people. It is for people who are here constantly and have the DIY skills and can reply quickly to any maintenance request, or can quickly jump in when a tenant moves out and do the work themselves. So I know a lot of Japanese people who are living close to the properties, and then it does make sense for them to be very hands-on with them. But I mean, you guys are remote, right?
Correct. Yeah. So we were, and I'll let Cole and Logan jump in and say how active they want to be. I believe we wish to be very active in the renovation space, but when it comes to simple fixes with a tenant in place where only a handyman is required, have someone able to do that for us. But if there are major renovations, have Cole and Logan do it. So maybe at the start of a purchase and major renovation, have Cole and Logan travel out there and do their work for a month or whatever it takes. To save money on the front end. And then when there's a change in tenancy, same thing, was my thought. But again, you've done this more. And so we're kind of also looking for good partnership dynamic and your ideas on that.
Well, we haven't worked directly with people. I mean, we've had customers who are buying holiday homes and then they're just there for a good few months at a time and they do whatever work they want to do on their own. They DIY it. But we haven't had a hybrid situation, because I'm assuming you'll still need local materials sourced, the plumbing, the wiring. Of course, you have to be licensed to do any foundational work, or I'm not sure what sort of experience you've got there, what sort of work you do, you don't do, but I'm assuming you're not going to be licensed in Japan. So I'm not sure. We always utilize renovation company, like local traditional Japanese renovation companies, when this kind of work is required. So I'm not sure how feasible it would be for you guys to do it yourselves. Maybe like you said, get one really cheap one as a pet project and see what you can do with it, and then let that dictate the next decisions on the next purchase, maybe.
And I think that's totally reasonable, and probably what Austin, our other partner who's not here tonight, prefers, is that we start one kind of in the vein like you're describing, maybe that is a mansion or an apartment, and then by kind of a side pet project. But Cole and Logan, do you have anything to add there?
Not really. I think more it was the value of the land. That's one of the reasons I'm looking at the home, is the value of the land goes up, not the value of the building. Sorry. Right. And with the condos, you don't necessarily get the land, you just get the condo. And I think that was one of the biggest things we were looking at is the value of the land going up rather than with a condo, it just loses value over time, unless it's in an area that starts to grow and then it increases in value.
That happens with condos as well, though. If you've got a central, I mean, the budget that you're describing in any case is not going to buy you a house in a central location in a city. So it's going to be quite suburban and therefore would probably not stand to gain that much in value. Condo units in central locations, when the economy does well, definitely do gain in value because it's a desired location. And they do come, I mean, there are some properties that are not freehold in Japan, but we'd normally steer you away from those. So the condos do come with a portion of the land, like the entire portion is divided between all of the unit owners. And they do gain in value when the economy does well, if they're in a very central location in a big city. But again, that's not something that you'll be able to budget for at this level with a house.
Okay.
So if your purchase price was, for example, 500,000-600,000, then it would start being feasible to purchase something in a central location that also has a larger land plot attached to it. And then, yes, that would definitely stand to gain more in value if and when the economy does well in that city specifically and in Japan overall, but not at 100, 120, no.
Logan, were you going to ask something?
I was just curious on the condos and like you said, there's multiple on the land. What do you typically see? Like how many condos are usually together in one building?
That varies hugely. So anywhere from 3 to 5 floors, let's say 4 to 5 units per floor, and all the way up to 12, 15, 20 floors with 250 units in total, like big concrete monsters. They run the gamut. There's all kinds.
So is the $500,000 to $600,000, is that buying like a full-on unit with multiple condos, or is that just one actual condo within a unit?
I was referring to a house, but that also definitely will buy you a smaller apartment building, not concrete. It's going to be wood or steel framed wood. Not super central, but not too suburban, hopefully. So something like 2 to 4 floors, maybe 4 to 12 units kind of thing.
So let's say that we want to get just.
Do you want me, sorry, while we're talking, do you want me to share my screen and show you some spreadsheets of similar properties that people have purchased, just to give you an idea?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Give me a second. While I'm searching, keep on talking, sorry.
Okay. So all I was going to ask is, let's say we just want to get started, and let's say we want to go on the lower end of that budget, like $80,000, and get started with a condo. With a goal to, we think of like the 1.2, 1.4% of the purchase price is the rental. I don't know that I know quite how to assess the average rent in an area without just hopping on at home and starting to look for rentals as if I'm a renter.
That's exactly what we do.
Okay. And so if I were looking for that 1.4% return in a condo in those various cities I listed, is that pretty a standard return in any of those regions I've listed? Or
did you mention 1.4? Sorry.
So if the purchase price is 100,000, does the rent end up being 1,400 a month? Or maybe you could enlighten us with another stat we should be looking at.
Let me show you. So I'll show you one sample. Let me just share the screen. I'll show you one sample of a small building, and then we'll show you one sample of a condo, just so you have a rough idea. So this is on purchase, and that was, as you can see, about 5 years ago. So prices have gone slightly up and yields have gone slightly down since then, but let's take that as a general benchmark. So this one was purchased here in Fukuoka City, which is one of the 3 cities that have been rising the most rapidly when Japan's economy does overall. So Tokyo, Osaka, Fukuoka are the ones that have been rising most sharply. This was purchased for 45.8 million yen, which is in today's rates, I think, 320,000 US or so. At the time, it was more like 100 yen to the dollar. Now it's more like 150. So this is a good time to enter it US dollars wise, but let's call it
let's just talk about yen. So 45.8 yen, this was a 6-unit building. So 2 floors, 3 units in each floor. Built in, sorry, I'm not seeing this because your guys, built in 2008, which was 10 years old at the time of purchase. Now it's 15. And the total rental income is about 261,000 yen per month. So that brought him to about 5.2 return before tax, right? So we took into account the monthly management fee, which consists of cleaning, internet, which you provide to all tenants, and annual fire safety equipment maintenance. And it also, this one doesn't include the property tax, which is about 163,000 per year. So maybe take another 0.2%, worst case 0.1, 0.2 off that with the property tax. So let's call it 5% before tax, right? Yields in this particular location would be a bit lower these days, but there are other locations that are still providing this kind of yield.
So is that
and I'll show you some photos down here too. Sorry.
Are you showing us this specific case because this is the type of purchase where we'd be looking at maybe buying a similar
correct. Yes.
Unit within this building specifically? It would
no.
like
I'm showing you what you can have if you purchase the entire building.
Okay.
So at the moment when he bought it, it was about 400,000 US. At the moment, it's a lot lower. It's more like 300 something. And this is what you would get for this amount of money, right? A 6-unit building. This is what the interior looks like. They've all got little lofts, but they're essentially a single bedroom.
Does that 5% change drastically when you go from building owner of a 6-unit building to a unit owner in a multi-unit building? Does that management fee rate and
not drastically, no, because instead of the monthly management fees for the entire building, you'd have monthly owner union fees, right? So I'll just show you another example of a unit. Give me a sec.
And as you're looking at that, it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, the recommendation is to kind of follow the 349 of your 350 who kind of buy into condos, because it does tend to give us this kind of a yield if we go that direction.
Well, with the house, you'll get similar or potentially even higher yield on purchase. But as tenants move out, as maintenance builds up, plus the fact that you've only got a single income stream as opposed to like 6 in this case, it just makes a lot less sense financially in the long run. Okay, so here
it seems like from your...
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. It just seems like from your podcasts and your the other things I've listened to from you, to enter an entire building ownership, you kind of have to look in that kind of $400,000 range, or I guess this is a good example, 45 million yen range to even get a good return.
But 45 million yen is a lot less dollars wise at the moment, right? So it used to be about 400,000. Now it's more like 300,000. So now here's some big news for anyone interested in Akiya, the abandoned vacant homes that are abundant all around Japan for very attractive purchase prices. Akiya Mart, our latest sponsor, is a recently founded online search and discovery tool for Japanese real estate. Its user interface will be very familiar to users of Zillow or Redfin. The platform essentially scouts the internet for property listings, translates them into English, and displays prices in US dollars, all in one place and with a dynamic map interface that makes browsing, finding, and shortlisting your favorite properties a piece of cake. Which any of you who have been struggling with the dozens, if not hundreds, of Japanese property websites that are available online and their very clunky interface will probably find a real blessing. They've got already over 500,000 listings on the platform, and the database is expanding daily. Ranging from abandoned rural homes to luxury urban properties, Akiya Mart makes it easy to find your dream home in Japan, regardless of your budget. Now, while the platform is essentially free for use, here's an exclusive offer for listeners of the podcast. You can use the promo code NTI to receive $5 off Akiya Mart Pro.
The subscription will unlock a bunch of very attractive features for you, including unrestricted access to the entire nationwide property database and a whole range of filters, which will help power charge your search for that elusive perfect home and make it even easier. So hop over to akiya-mart.com. That's AKIYA-MART, akiya-mart.com, and kick off your search today. So this is, are you seeing the second one I just opened, or do I need to share it separately?
This is still the first
It's
one.
the same one.
Yeah. Okay, hang on.
Do you know what those the each one of those units were renting for? I know that was about a 5% return. What does that make each one of those units renting for? Can you do that off the top of your head? I mean, that's something I could probably figure out too, but I'm just curious.
I'd say about 60,000 Japanese yen, 50 to 60,000 Japanese yen. So call it 4 to 450 US.
Okay.
Per month. So this one, now you're seeing the new one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one is in Kyoto, for example. Not super central, but not in a bad location. 11-floor building, 168 units. So that's obviously a concrete building, not a little wooden structure. This unit was purchased for 4.8, so just about 10% of that building price. So at the moment, this would be about 35,000. Rent price is 42,000 per month. Building fees are a total of just under 9,000 yen per month. It was built in 1989. We'd normally recommend younger, but this particular customer wanted to buy that one specifically for his own purposes as well. And this one generates, after building fees and everything, about 6%. So we can get buildings that'll generate about 6%, and we can also get individual units in better locations that will generate about 5%. That's kind of fluid, but you should assume whatever you're purchasing, whether it's a building or a unit, somewhere between, I'd say, in a good location, between 4 to 6 and a bit percent if we're lucky, before tax.
Okay.
Right?
So if that's the direction we went with the budget of 100 to 120,000 there, is there do we just cast a wide net? Because I've looked at probably 200 properties focused obviously on single family homes, because until now that's where our minds were.
Yeah.
Would I just restart that search on at home and kind of feed you what looks like our interests, and it doesn't matter where we're looking, the whole of Japan is on the table?
Yeah, I would probably guide you towards trying to make it 1 or 2 units. Don't try to divide that into 3, because this one, for example, is a pretty low quality unit, to be honest. It's built a bit older than what we'd feel comfortable with. And if you look at the size, it's a shoebox, essentially, right? Like 14 square meters. How they even fit a balcony there, I don't know. But 14 square meters, which is like half a hotel room. And Japanese tenants, I mean, a lot of them are comfortable. Comfortable is probably not the right word, but a lot of them can't afford anything bigger and more expensive than that. So you would find tenants, but they would be lower quality tenants. Whereas if you bought something that, let's say, 20, 25 square meter, or even 30, 40 square meters, which might fit a couple or a couple plus a toddler or a baby, you just tend to get higher quality tenants.
Okay. So I sent you that list of places we've looked at as far as locations, anywhere from Sapporo to Fukuoka. Do you recall thinking any of those were a bad idea? Ichinomiya in the Nagoya area.
Yeah, so specifically, sorry, I'm just trying to bring up the list again. So Nagoya specifically tends to be a bit blue collar. I mean, it's Japan. There's not going to be drug labs and ghettos, but it is lower quality tenants, just in the sense that you occasionally get somebody canceling mid-lease or have delayed payments or just missing rent issues and stuff like that. Nothing like what you're used to in the States, but still, compared to Japan, it's a bit rougher in Nagoya. Sapporo specifically comes with a lot of winter-related expenses and longer vacancies as a result of winter. So if we do buy in Sapporo, we try to aim for higher yield on purchase, because we know that it's going to go down as expensive heating equipment breaks, and as we get like a 4 or 5 month vacancy, because people don't like to move around when it snows. So maybe slight caveat to Sapporo there. Ichinomiya, I will look at the population figures. I'm just wondering.
Most of these cities that I sent you demonstrate uptrends in growth, but I do not know how to trust or vet Japanese census reports.
Ichinomiya in Chiba Prefecture, you mean, right?
Ichinomiya in Hyogo, I
In
believe it is.
Hyogo.
Or
Oh.
sorry, not Hyogo. It's whatever prefecture Nagoya is in.
Why am I not? I'm not seeing it in the list of population growth locations. Give me a second. Ichinomiya. Only place called Ichinomiya that I see is slightly growing is a tiny little town in Chiba Prefecture. So let me open.
Aichi is the one I was thinking.
Aichi
And so
Prefecture,
maybe it's
yeah.
not growing.
Let me just open the bigger census because I've filtered it by growth. Ichinomiya. That's Chiba-ken, Aichi-ken. There we go. No, that's actually shrunk by, not by much, by 0.2% in the 5 years between 2015 census to 2020 census. So I'd call it stable, definitely not growing, but stable.
Okay.
It's a big enough town, but I don't know that we had anyone purchase there, so I can't tell you much about the economy without Googling it a bit.
Okay.
I have a question
So
on the condos.
Yep.
Is there a lot of room to do DIY stuff in condos, or if we just buy a single unit in like a 200 unit building, what does once we buy it, are we like over everything with like plumbing, electrical, or is part of that kind of like here in the United States, how we have the HOA and you have your homeowners association, you have to pay into it, and that'll cover some of it, but not necessarily the inside.
It's not covering
what would it be?
No, it doesn't cover the interior. It covers the structural maintenance and structural renovations. The balcony is considered a part of the common areas of the building, so they will take care of your balcony for you. But anything else interior is on you.
Okay, awesome.
And just looking at Ichinomiya now, traditionally noted for textiles, regional commerce center with a mixed economy of manufacturing and agriculture. I mean, it doesn't look like a bad city. I don't know that I know anyone who's bought there yet, but again, population is stable and it's big enough that we'd feel relatively comfortable with it. But it's your first purchase, so I would maybe steer you towards more larger metropolitan centers. I know that it comes at the price of yields a bit, but for your first purchase, if it was up to me, I'd rather see you with something a bit more safe and stable, even if it's lower yield. So stick to the top 7 cities kind of thing. Tokyo, Yokohama, Nagoya, Sapporo with the caveats that I've mentioned, Kyoto, Osaka, Kobe, Fukuoka kind of thing.
And if we are looking for 2 units with the 5% yield with the budget of 100 to 120, does that rule out any of those top 7 other than Tokyo?
Central Osaka would be pushing it. We might see something that gets there, but that'd be more rare. And Kawasaki City, which is kind of similar dynamics to Tokyo. It's just so close to Tokyo that it's kind of, numbers-wise, it acts very similar to Tokyo. But all of the other ones should be feasible at that yield level, yes. I mean, central Fukuoka would be tough as well. Maybe more like 4 and a bit. But suburban Fukuoka or slightly less central Fukuoka, definitely.
And so that leaves Yokohama on the table.
It does, but Yokohama is a bit strange in the sense that the 3-4 stations around the city center are super popular, very similar to Tokyo. Beyond that, yields get higher, but it also becomes very rural. I mean, Yokohama is mostly suburban. It's Japan's 2nd biggest city, but only the area right next to the port is like the metropolitan center that people imagine when they think about Yokohama. The rest of it is pretty suburban, hilly, quiet residential areas and so forth. There's a bit more action towards Chinatown, but that's it.
In my 4 years in Japan, that's what I was closest to and I'm familiar with. But we are open to any of those areas. So another question I'd have is outside of At Home and Me Group and those platforms, do you, through your real estate contacts, get any listings available to you prior to them being listed on these big websites? Or is that an option for us to pursue through you?
It's a very open market, so we would occasionally get some PDFs a few days before the agents upload them to websites, but it's not going to make a major difference in most cases.
But if we gave you, let's say we set up all the affidavits and all the, essentially all our contracts and got all the paperwork and money in place, could we also give you kind of a green flag to, if it meets certain parameters, go ahead and act more quickly, or is that of no benefit?
Yeah, a lot of our customers do that. So as long as they trust us with that, then they say, look, don't wait for my approval. If anything comes up that's within these parameters, just go ahead and submit an application. So yes, that's definitely doable.
Okay. So what would be our next steps to finding out your rates and the paperwork? And if we wanted to go forward, we'll obviously have to take this to Austin, who wasn't able to be at this meeting, and kind of discuss. But if we want to do that, how do we pursue that from here?
So what I haven't mentioned until right now is that my wife and business partner has forbidden me from onboarding new customers for full purchase facilitation at the moment, because they're just overwhelmed, and we're struggling with we're in Fukuoka, so bilingual staffing is always an issue here. We just had to fire 2, and now we're hiring 2 more. So depending on when you'll want to pull the trigger in the next 3-4 months, it's probably not going to be directly through us. But if you do want to do it quicker, what I can do is I can put you directly in touch with a super friendly Tokyo English-speaking agent. She's still a realtor, so she's not necessarily going to know to guide you in the right direction and hold your hand, but we can come in, or I can come in rather, as a consultant and hold your hand and be a part of the chat group on WhatsApp or Line or wherever you'll be chatting with her, and just tell her what to do as she does it, kind of thing. It'll be a lot cheaper than using us for full facilitation as well. Otherwise, if you want us to do everything for you, then it'll take us a few more months to get back into it.
So why don't we keep both avenues wide open? And I've been putting about 20 to 30 hours a week into this endeavor. And so I could pursue that avenue with her. And if I don't make it too far, round back with you in 3 months and see if you could assist.
We can definitely do that. Yeah. So I'll be a fly on the wall in that chat group that we'll set up with her. And if and when it looks like you're getting serious with a particular purchase, just I'll bill you for our 10-hour retainer, and then I'll be able to consult you throughout the purchase process if you end up doing it with her.
Okay. So I did set up the OFX account, and I had a question about that. If in our setup with 4 of us going in on this, but probably only purchasing 1 to 2 small units at the get-go, I clicked the personal business account, or the personal account, not the business account. Is that an appropriate avenue for now? Okay.
Yeah, no difference there. Just bear in mind that for smaller transfers, you probably want to sign up with Wise, because with OFX, it's an international remittance every time. I can send you a referral link to Wise as well. So similar to OFX, we'll both get bonuses if you sign up through them. So like when you're paying me, or if you're paying the agent to travel somewhere and do a viewing for you, then just do that via Wise, because OFX will hit you for, not OFX, but the banks on the Japanese side will hit you for $20-30 on each small remittance like that. And when it's time to actually remit the money for the purchase itself, then use OFX.
From a functional, like how the money moves standpoint, is there any way, being foreigners, we can't open a bank account there? Are we able to transfer money and have it sit in some sort of business bank account type setting within your business until it is needed to be used, and you kind of then pay the real estate agent, pay the property manager?
That's usually what we do for our customers, and the agent, if you end up working directly with the agent, she'll be able to do that for you as well. So if you want to, even if you don't have a property immediately, but you want to capitalize on the rates while they're in your favor, then yes, you can definitely transfer to her or to us in bulk and just have a sit on it until you're ready to purchase.
That was precisely my thought, was would NoFX be better in that case if we were to send say
Yes, if you're
$50,000
sending a
to get
larger
done.
amount, then yes, OFX is the way to go, because Ys are limited to 1 million yen transfers, so it'll be repeated charges for every $10,000 or what.
Okay. And if we were, after our conversation within our group, deciding that we'd rather just wait the 3 months for you, would it be possible to transmit that money sooner to take advantage of this rate with the anticipation that you won't actually be able to help us until, say, June or July?
For sure,
Is
yeah.
that possible?
So we'll get the engagement forms out of the way. But if we are
Okay.
going that way, I'll need to confirm with my partner if it is going to be 3-4 months, or if she thinks it's going to be longer. I just don't want to leave you hanging in case it's going to end up being longer.
We were kind of setting the anticipated time of purchase to be about May, but that was mostly to get us moving and not because we have any specific deadline. And so I think it's reasonable to consider
Okay.
both avenues. So
Yeah. So do your roundtable thing and let me know how you want to proceed. And again, if you want to just test the waters with the agent, she's not going to charge anything in advance. So we can kick off a conversation there and see how you go.
that'd be great. Why don't you, if you don't mind, Cole and Logan, stop me if you disagree, but I think keeping both doors wide open and signing your paperwork, Ziv, if you want to set it up as if we're waiting for you, but also put us in touch with this agent, then I'll keep both irons in the fire for now.
No problem. We can do both.
Cole, Logan.
Yeah, I agree. Let's do it.
That's great.
All right. Awesome. So if you could just reply to our last correspondence, just reminding me, because I'm jumping in another meeting in a minute. So just remind me to do that, and we'll get the ball rolling.
Sounds good. I will try and just shoot a brief summary and a couple of requests. And I think that covers most of what I had asked. So yeah. Oh, if you can I add to that list that we would be interested in you being positioned to purchase on our behalf if you get those listings that do not hit the internet too. So I'll add that in the email, but if you'll just kind of put a little note on that, because that's where we could see you being of great help to us.
Yeah, it's not just listings that don't hit the internet yet. Even the ones that are listed on MLS websites, they often get snatched within a day or two. So even if we have our research staff scourge the websites and they discover something that was just listed online, that might be a good idea to pull the trigger on pretty quickly too, if it's a good deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Ziv. We
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Great meeting you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
You as
too.
well.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
All right, nice little chat there as well. Hope you found some value in this one too. And to be fair, those are all very reasonable questions. It makes perfect sense if you've got the skills and expertise to leverage those into some profits by doing as much as you can on your own. It's just important to have one's expectations be aligned with reality, which is what we are all about here at NTI. Now, before we go, we're also, as always, going to tell you and also link to our other sponsor's website. That's Hiroshi Shimizu, immigration lawyer and administrative scrivener. If you're thinking about moving here on a more permanent basis, or you're already in Japan on some sort of a temporary visa and you want to switch to a longer term or permanent one, or if you're considering setting up a local company or a branch office of a foreign company and you've got any sort of business or visa related inquiries, or even if you just want to find out what your options are on any of these topics, feel free to contact Hiroshi Shimizu. You can find him at japanimmigrationexperts.com, and he can help you set up a company, apply for any kind of visa, or just provide you with the best advice and extremely affordable consultation related to these topics. And he's already done that for many of our listeners. So feel free to reach out to him. Again, that's japanimmigrationexperts.com, and you'll be well on your way. And that's it from us for today, folks. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Japan Real Estate Podcast. Do share it with your networks, and please let us know what you think. So leave us a short rating or review on the iTunes Store, on Spotify, or just drop us a line in the comment section or wherever you might have found this episode. We love hearing from you. Hope to have you with us again next time, and until then, have a great day or night ahead. Yoroshiku.